The woman on the side of Highway 89 was dressed like she owned the desert itself. Her motorcycle, a piece of art worth more than most houses, sat silent under the Arizona stars. Robert Williams should have driven past. He had $60 until Friday, and a daughter asleep in the back seat who deserved better than a father who stopped for strangers. But he pulled over anyway because that's who he'd always been. Even when the world had made it clear that being decent was a luxury he couldn't afford, he didn't know he'd just met the woman who had destroyed his life. The October night carried that particular clarity unique to Arizona high desert, cool enough to raise goosebumps, dry enough to see stars undimmed by humidity or city lights. Robert's Ford F-150 idled on the shoulder, its 200,000-mile engine ticking as it cooled. The fuel gauge needle kissed the red zone. $3.50 a gallon, 12 miles to Sedona. He'd calculated it twice already. In the rearview mirror, Emily stirred, but didn't wake. 14 years old, all sharp angles and careful silence. She had her mother's dark hair, but none of her mother's easy charm. What she had instead was a way of watching the world that made Robert's chest ache, like she was constantly braced for the next person to leave. The motorcycle was a Ducati Panigale 5.4. Robert knew this the way some men knew horses or wines intimately from years of reading magazines he could no longer afford. $40,000 of Italian engineering. Candy apple red with carbon fiber cowling that caught moonlight like liquid metal. The woman leaning against the guardrail wore Dainese leather gear that probably cost more than Robert's monthly mortgage. She held a phone up, searching for signal that didn't exist this far from civilization. When she saw his headlights, her posture shifted, not relief exactly, but acknowledgement. Like she'd expected help to arrive eventually because problems always solved themselves for people like her. Robert killed the engine. The silence rushed in, filled only by wind through juniper and the distant call of a nighthawk. "You don't have to do this." Her voice carried the particular confidence of someone who expected obstacles to dissolve, usually because she could afford to make them disappear. Robert was already crouching by the bike phone flashlight illuminating the engine bay. Already doing it. The problem revealed itself immediately. Fuel line quick disconnect had vibrated, loose classic Ducati issue on bikes ridden hard by people who appreciated speed more than maintenance. He could see where the connection had been over-torqued at some point, threads slightly stripped, allowing just enough play for vibration to work it free over time. "At least let me pay you. What's your rate?" Robert's hands moved with unconscious precision, reconnecting the line and checking the fuel pump relay. 20 years of aerospace engineering had taught him that all systems, whether satellite propulsion or Italian superbikes, followed the same fundamental logic. Everything fit together in specific ways for specific reasons. When something failed, the failure told a story. "Don't need your money, just need 5 more minutes." The words came out harder than he'd intended. He forced his voice level, professional. "Patience is half the job." She watched him work with an intensity that made his shoulders tense. Not curiosity exactly, something more analytical, like she was studying him rather than observing. The distinction bothered him in ways he couldn't quite articulate. Behind him, Emily's voice cut through the darkness. "Dad, just helping someone, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. Is she okay?" "She's fine. Bike just needed a quick fix." The woman glanced toward the truck, toward Emily's face pressed against the window. For just a second, something shifted in her expression, something that looked almost like longing or recognition or guilt. Then the analytical mask returned. Robert tightened the connection, checked it twice, stood and wiped his hands on jeans already stained with oil and Arizona dust. "Try starting her now." The woman swung onto the bike with practiced ease. The engine caught immediately, settling into that distinctive Ducati growl, deep and mechanical and expensive. She sat there for a long moment, regarding him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "I'm Jennifer. Jennifer Davis." The name meant nothing to him. Should it have? She said it like she expected recognition. That slight pause important people make when introducing themselves, waiting for the flash of awareness that confirms their place in the world. "Robert Williams." He was already turning back toward the F-150, done with this interaction, eager to get Emily home. "Robert." She tested his name like she was cataloging it. Thank you, really. If there's ever anything I can do. You're good. Safe ride home. He was in the truck key in the ignition before she could say anything else. In the rearview mirror, he watched her sit there for a long moment, backlit by her own headlight, before she finally pulled back onto the highway and disappeared into darkness like she'd never existed at all. Emily's voice was rough with sleep. Was she nice? Robert thought about the question about the expensive leathers and the way the woman had looked at him not unkindly, but with a kind of analytical distance, like he was an interesting problem rather than a person. I don't know, baby. Maybe. Emily made a small sound that might have been agreement and curled back against the window. Robert pulled onto the highway, pointing the truck toward Sedona and the small house they rented on the edge of town, the one with the detached garage he'd turned into a repair shop, because working with his hands was the only thing that still made sense. He forgot about Jennifer Davis before he made it home. She didn't forget about him. What Robert didn't know, couldn't know, was that the woman he'd just helped had been in the boardroom when the AI contract was signed. The contract that eliminated his position at Horizon Aerospace. The contract that reduced his 20 years of expertise to a line item in a quarterly report, labor costs reduced by 40%. The garage at 342 State Route 89A wore its age honestly. Single-bay cinder block construction hand-painted sign that said, Williams Repair, honest work, fair prices. Inside tools hung on pegboard in careful organization that spoke to military precision or engineering discipline, or both. A snap-on toolbox bought, used, still represented $3,000 Robert didn't really have. The air smelled like motor oil and Arizona dust, and something else, the particular scent of a man trying to build something from wreckage. Sunday morning found Robert under a 1987 Chevy C10, wrestling with a transmission that had given up on life sometime during the Reagan administration. The radio played low, some talk show host explaining economic recovery in tones suggesting he'd never chosen between groceries and electricity. Robert turned it off. 3 years ago, he'd stood in a conference room in Denver with 200 other engineers, all of them staring at a PowerPoint slide that said, Operational Efficiency Initiative, like those words meant anything except, you're fired. The VP of Operations had worn a suit that probably cost more than Robert's monthly salary and an expression of studied neutrality, as he explained that AI integration would streamline processes, reduce redundancies, optimize workflows. 4,000 people eliminated. 20 years of Robert's life reduced to a paragraph in an earnings call. These difficult but necessary restructuring decisions position Horizon Aerospace for continued growth in an increasingly competitive marketplace. The security badge that had opened every door for 2 decades stopped working at 5:01 p.m. Robert walked out carrying a cardboard box with family photos, an Engineer of the Year 2016 plaque, and a coffee mug Emily made in 3rd grade, glazed, crooked, and painted with hearts. The parking lot had been full of colleagues sitting in cars, crying, making frantic phone calls to spouses or headhunters, or anyone who might have answers. Robert had driven home in silence, the radio off, trying to figure out how to tell his daughter that everything he'd promised her about hard work and dedication and playing by the rules had been a lie. The present crashed back in the form of footsteps. Not the heavy tread of ranchers who brought him their equipment, not the hurried click of retirees who needed sedans serviced. These steps were measured, deliberate, expensive. Robert rolled out from under the truck to find an elderly Hispanic woman standing in the doorway, worry creasing her face. Mr. Williams, I only have $80. Mrs. Martinez, 68-years-old widow, drove a 2005 Honda Civic with 230,000 miles and a clutch that slipped like butter on a hot skillet. Robert had seen her at the grocery store last week, calculating costs on her phone, putting items back when the total climbed too high. He checked the clutch. Replacement kit ran $180 in parts. Labor usually $300. Total should be $480. I can do it for $80, but you gotta promise me next time your car makes a funny noise you bring it here first, before it becomes expensive. Deal. Her eyes filled. God bless you, Mr. Williams. Robert was uncomfortable with praise, with gratitude, with the implicit acknowledgement that he was doing something good, when really he was just doing what made sleep possible. "Just bring me some of those tamales at Christmas. We're square." After she left, Robert stood in the empty garage doing math. $80 minus $180 in parts meant he'd just paid $100 for the privilege of helping someone who needed help. Emily needed new shoes before winter. The mortgage was due in 11 days. The F-150 needed brake pads, but Mrs. Martinez needed her car to get to cleaning jobs that paid $9 an hour. And Robert needed to be able to look at himself in the mirror. The school bus rumbled past at 3:45, dropping Emily at the corner, 0.8 of a mile from home. Robert watched her walk up the dusty shoulder backpack, heavy with borrowed library books. Brief history of time. The Martian physics texts meant for college students. She wore the same Sedona High hoodie as Friday as Wednesday as every day for the past month. She entered the garage like she always did, quiet and observant, taking in everything before speaking. "How was school, sweetheart?" "Fine." The one-word answer that meant something was wrong. "Just fine." A pause, the kind that meant Emily was calculating whether to share, whether the truth was worth the worry it would cause him. Finally, "Dad, Melissa asked why I wear the same hoodie every week." The words hit like a wrench to the sternum. Robert set down his tools carefully, precisely, giving himself time to control his expression. "What did you tell her?" "That I like this one. That it's comfortable." Emily's voice was steady, matter-of-fact, like she was reporting weather rather than humiliation. Robert knelt down to eye level. At 14, she was almost as tall as he was, all elbows and growth spurt and fierce intelligence she tried to hide because being smart made you a target. "Baby, I'm sorry. After the Martin job next week." "Dad, I don't care about clothes." She cut him off with the same tone she used for math problems, for debates, for any situation requiring logic over emotion. "I just wish things were easier. For you." 14 years old and worried about him. 14 years old and already understanding that the world had rules that didn't apply fairly. That hard work didn't guarantee security, that parents couldn't always protect children from understanding too much too soon. Dinner was Barilla pasta at $1.29 Prego sauce, at $2.49 day-old garlic bread from the Safeway discount rack at $1 even. $4.78 to feed 2 people. The refrigerator wore bills like battle scars, electricity past due and red water and sewer internet they couldn't really afford, but Emily needed for school, the catastrophic health insurance that cost $320 a month and covered almost nothing until they hit the $8,000 deductible. Robert's mental calculator ran constantly these days. This week's income, $320. Mrs. Martinez's 80 in oil change at 45, brake pads at 75, all paid in cash that went straight to the mortgage fund in the coffee can because banks charged fees for having no money. This week's minimum needs $400, the shortfall $80 and growing. He could sell his father's watch, a 1972 Timex, nothing valuable except memory, or the good socket set, the Craftsman one he'd saved for, but he needed tools to work, and cheaper tools meant more time per job, meant less money overall. Emily did homework at the kitchen table while Robert washed dishes, watching her bend over algebra equations and AP English essays and physics problems that would have challenged him at her age. She was brilliant, not parent bias. Brilliant, but genuinely measurably scholarships and MIT brilliant, if the world was fair, and if hard work mattered, and if test scores could overcome the reality of being poor. "You're smart as hell, Emily. You know that." She didn't look up from derivatives. "Doesn't feel like it helps much." "It will. College, scholarship. You're going to MIT, baby, or Stanford, somewhere that sees how brilliant you are." "Dad, we can't afford—" "We'll figure it out. You just keep those grades up." "Deal." A small smile. "Deal." At 11 p.m., Robert lay in bed staring at a ceiling water stain from last monsoon season's roof leak that he still needed to fix, thinking about 20 years at Horizon Aerospace. He'd designed propulsion systems for Atlas V satellites, the kind that helped scientists understand climate change, enabled global communications, tracked weather patterns that saved lives. He'd led a team of 12 engineers, trained junior staff fresh from MIT and Georgia Tech, felt pride in work that mattered beyond quarterly earnings. Salary $98,000 a year. Benefits: full health, dental, vision, 401k match pension that would have set up retirement at 65. Identity: someone who contributed, who built things, who mattered. Now he ran hands over his face and felt calluses that hadn't existed 3 years ago. Cuts that healed slower at 42, the particular exhaustion of a body worked harder than it was designed for. Now he was someone who couldn't buy his daughter shoes. But Emily would go to college. Emily would have better. If it killed him, and some days he thought it might, Emily would have the future he'd been promised and denied. Machines remember every mistake you make, he'd told Emily once while teaching her to change oil, and they make you pay for it later. People deserve better than that. People deserve second chances. 3 days after the highway, Jennifer Davis walked into Williams Repair wearing clothes that cost more than Robert's monthly income, but were clearly selected to look casual. Levi's still stiff from the store Patagonia shirt with tags recently removed. Nike sneakers so clean they'd obviously never touched actual dirt. Robert was under the Chevy when he heard footsteps that didn't belong, soft, expensive, deliberate. He rolled out on the creeper to find her standing in the middle of his workspace holding 2 Starbucks Grande Pike places like offerings. "Mr. Williams, I hope I'm not interrupting." He stood slowly wiping hands on a red shop rag that had been white in another lifetime. "Can I help you with something?" "I wanted to thank you properly for Saturday night." She held out 1 coffee. "And to be completely honest, I wanted to learn." Robert studied her manicured nails, trying to hide in casual clothes, skin too smooth for outdoor work posture that screamed expensive education and rooms that rearranged themselves around her presence. "Learn how things work, how to actually fix machinery." She met his eyes directly. No looking away, no discomfort with the directness. "I realized standing on that highway that I know almost nothing about engines, about how any of this actually functions. You diagnosed my problem in 30 seconds and fixed it in 12 minutes. I want to understand that. Lady, no offense, but you don't look like someone who needs to learn how to fix motorcycles. You look like someone who pays people to fix them." A small smile, like she'd expected this. "You're right, but I'd rather learn from someone who actually understands it, not just theory truth, the way things really break and how they really get fixed." Something in her voice sounded almost like respect. Almost. Robert's mind ran calculations. Rich woman, bored or restless or slumming. But mortgage due in 11 days, $890. Emily needed winter coat 60 minimum. F-150 brake pads, 120 in parts he couldn't put off much longer. "I can't pay you to learn here." "I know, I'll pay you. For your time, your expertise, whatever's fair." Pride and practicality went to war in Robert's chest. Pride said this was charity with extra steps, said real men didn't perform for rich people's entertainment. Practicality said mortgage and Emily and winter. Practicality won. It usually did these days. $200 per session, Wednesdays and Saturdays 2 hours each. Robert crossed his arms, making the boundary clear. "And we do real work, not introduction to engines kindergarten stuff. You want to learn, you're changing oil, replacing brake pads, diagnosing electrical problems. You'll get dirty, you'll screw up, and I won't go easy on you because you're paying. I wouldn't want you to. One more thing, you don't waste my time. You show up on time, you focus, you do the work. This isn't a hobby for you to drop when it gets boring." "Clear?" "Crystal clear." They shook hands. Her grip was firm, trying to prove something. His grip was calloused with nothing left to prove. $1,200 a month extra income. Mortgage, plus groceries, plus maybe new clothes for Emily. Robert could deal with a rich lady playing mechanic for a few weeks. They always quit after the first real grease stain anyway. Jennifer left. Robert watched her drive away in a rental Nissan Altima, deliberately not the Tesla she probably owned, deliberately trying to blend. He muttered, "She'll quit after the first oil change," to the empty garage. But he was already calculating mortgage $890, groceries $200 if they were careful, Emily's winter coat, maybe even put some back for college, start that fund he'd been meaning to start for 3 years. What Robert didn't see was Jennifer in the Altima phone open to voice memo app recording, Initial contact successful. Subject Robert Williams. 42, former aerospace engineer, current independent mechanic. Displays textbook, working-class dignity, refuses tips, sets firm boundaries, shows pride in craft. Living conditions appear financially stressed based on vehicle condition and deferred maintenance visible on property. Will begin observation sessions Saturday. Recommend documenting conversational patterns, value statements, authentic working-class perspective for Senate testimony preparation. She saved it. Research, subject 001, RW, initial contact. A small voice in her head whispered that this was wrong, that using someone's trust as research material crossed ethical lines she'd spent her career pretending didn't exist. She suppressed the voice the way she'd suppressed thousands like it, with logic, with justification, with the reminder that understanding worker displacement required primary source observation. The greater good, she told herself. I'm doing this for the greater good. Saturday arrived with Jennifer at the garage door at 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes early, wearing work clothes that looked like a costume designer's idea of mechanic casual. Robert assessed jeans washed once, but still too stiff. Carhartt shirt from REI with tags removed, but fabric unworn. Red Wing boots so new the leather hadn't creased hair in a ponytail, held by a band that probably cost more than his breakfast. She looked like a catalog model for women who work with hands but never actually do. But she'd shown up early. That counted for something. Before we touch tools, you need to understand theory. Robert led her to a workbench where a disassembled Chevy small block V8 sat like a patient on an operating table. A combustion engine is just controlled explosions. 4 strokes, intake, compression, combustion, exhaust. He walked her through each component: piston creating vacuum to draw air and fuel cylinder containing the explosion crankshaft, converting linear motion to rotational. Jennifer took notes in a moleskin notebook, asked questions that were actually intelligent, caught on faster than he'd expected. So the spark plug ignites at the precise moment the piston reaches top dead center. Exactly. Timing is everything. Off by a few degrees, engine runs rough, loses power, maybe destroys itself. Like in business, one bad decision at the wrong time can... Robert cut her off. We're talking about engines, not business. She nodded, filed that boundary away. Right, sorry. He held up a combination wrench. This is a 1/2 inch. You'll use it 90% of the time. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Simple. Jennifer tried to loosen a bolt on a valve cover, turned it the wrong way. The bolt tightened instead of loosening. Other way. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I know. It's just muscle memory. You don't have muscle memory yet. That's what we're building. After 30 seconds of struggling, her frustration showed. Why is it so stuck? Because someone over-torqued it 20 years ago and it's been seizing ever since. That's the thing about machines, they remember every mistake, and they make you pay for it later. Jennifer stopped, looked at him with that analytical expression he was beginning to recognize. Is that just about machines? Robert met her eyes. Mostly. A pause. Something unspoken passing between them that neither acknowledged. Spray this penetrating oil on it. Let it sit 5 minutes, then try again. Patience is half the job. From the corner of the garage, Emily watched from her usual perch on an old metal stool. She'd started showing up during sessions, not participating, just observing. Robert had asked once if she wanted to help. She'd said no, she just wanted to read. But Emily rarely read during sessions. She watched. Specifically, she watched Jennifer. What Emily saw Jennifer asking lots of questions about Robert's life that had nothing to do with engines. How long have you lived in Sedona? What made you become an engineer? How's Emily doing in school? And after Robert answered, Jennifer's eyes would go distant for just a few seconds, like she was memorizing cataloging filing information away for later use. Twice, Emily saw Jennifer check her phone after sessions, typing quickly. Something was wrong. Emily couldn't articulate exactly what, but the instinct that had helped her survive her mother's abandonment was screaming warnings. This woman wasn't here to learn about engines. She was here for something else. Week 2 brought oil changes. Jennifer removed a drain plug and hot oil poured over her new Red Wing boots. Shit. Robert almost smiled. Welcome to the club. You're not a real mechanic until you've been baptized in motor oil. Week 3 brake pads. Jennifer successfully removed caliper bolts, extracted old pads, examined the wear pattern. Robert pointed. See how these are worn, outside pad more than inside. What's that tell you? Uneven wear, caliper slide pins need lubrication. Robert was impressed despite himself. Exactly right. Her hands were changing. The manicure was gone, replaced by oil under nails that wouldn't scrub out small cuts and scrapes, calluses forming at the base of her fingers. She was actually doing the work, actually learning, showing up week after week without complaint. It was almost enough to make Robert forget she was paying him. Almost enough to feel like teaching instead of performing. Session 10 brought deeper conversation. They were rebuilding a carburetor together, hands moving in synchronization after weeks of practice when Jennifer asked, "You mentioned you used to be an engineer. What kind?" Robert's hands kept working. "Aerospace, satellite propulsion systems." "That's fascinating. What company?" His shoulders stiffened slightly. "Horizon Aerospace, in Denver." "Did you like it?" Long pause. Tools clicking against metal. Finally, loved it. Best job I ever had. "What made you leave?" Jaw tight now. "Didn't leave, got eliminated. Company decided engineers were too expensive and algorithms were cheaper." "I'm sorry, that must have been..." "It was 3 years ago, I'm over it." He wasn't over it. "How many people were let go?" 4,000 in one day. Jennifer went very still. Her hands stopped moving. I can't imagine." "No, you probably can't." Silence. Just the sound of tools on metal, the hum of the overhead fan, the distant call of ravens outside. Then Robert surprising himself with honesty. "You know what the worst part was?" Not the layoff itself. It was walking out past security like I'd done something wrong. Like 20 years of dedication meant nothing. Like I was disposable. Jennifer's hands trembled slightly. Robert didn't notice. "Do you think they were wrong, that AI can't do what you did?" Robert considered the question with engineer's precision. "No, AI probably can do some of what we did, maybe most of it. But there's things it can't do. Can't feel when something's about to fail. Can't improvise when the problem doesn't match the manual. Can't teach a scared kid fresh out of college that mistakes are how you learn, not how you get fired." He looked at her directly. "Can't give a damn about the work beyond the efficiency metrics." Jennifer looked away. "Those are important things. Didn't matter to the spreadsheet." That night Emily couldn't sleep. At 11:30 p.m., while Robert snored in the next room, she opened her laptop, a 2018 Dell that took 3 minutes to boot, slow enough that she'd learned to be patient with technology the way her father was patient with engines. Google search, Jennifer Davis, too common. 250 million results. Refined search, Jennifer Davis CEO. First result, Jennifer Davis named to Fortune 500 CEOs under 40. Emily clicked. The article loaded slowly, images rendering in chunks. When the photo finally appeared, Emily's stomach dropped. Jennifer Davis in an Armani suit, confident smile, San Francisco skyline behind her. Caption: Jennifer Davis, 36, CEO of Crosstech Industries, has transformed the AI automation landscape. Emily read with increasing horror. Company valuation, $6 billion. Specializes in AI systems for manufacturing and aerospace sectors. Major clients include Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Horizon Aerospace. The last 2 words hit like a fist. New search, Crosstech Horizon Aerospace, press release from June 2021. Horizon Aerospace partners with Crosstech for AI-driven efficiency. Photo of Jennifer Davis shaking hands with Horizon's CEO. Quote from Jennifer: "This partnership represents the future of aerospace efficiency, By integrating our AI systems, Horizon will reduce operational costs by 40% while maintaining quality standards. Date June 2021, 2 months before the layoffs. Emily searched Horizon Aerospace Layoffs 2021 with hands that had started shaking. Denver Post. Horizon Aerospace cuts 4,000 jobs in major restructuring. Bloomberg. AI automation blamed for massive aerospace layoffs. CNN. Workers protest Horizon Aerospace job cuts. She found her father's letter to the Sedona Red Rock News, published July 2021. Robert's words dignified and heartbroken, explaining what it felt like to be reduced to a line item, to have 20 years dismissed as operational inefficiency. The connections assembled themselves with terrible clarity. Jennifer's company made the AI that replaced Dad. Jennifer personally oversaw the Horizon contract. Jennifer was worth $6 billion. Dad was struggling to pay the mortgage, and Jennifer was in their garage pretending to be a student, asking questions about Dad's life, recording God knew what. Emily opened Google Docs, typed a title, "The Cost of Efficiency, A Daughter's Perspective on Corporate Conscience." She wrote for 3 hours until her eyes burned and her hands cramped. She wrote about watching her father work himself to exhaustion. She wrote about wearing the same 3 outfits to school. She wrote about the woman who came to their garage with secrets and lies and a research agenda disguised as curiosity. She wrote about what it meant when billionaires treated workers as specimens to study rather than human beings deserving dignity. At 2:47 a.m., Emily created a Medium account, hovered over the Publish button, thought about her father's reaction. He'd be angry, protective, worried about consequences. But people needed to know. The world needed to see what Jennifer Davis had done. Emily clicked Publish. Then she closed the laptop and tried to sleep, knowing she wouldn't. Sunday morning arrived with phone calls. Robert's cell rang at 8 a.m., unknown number. He ignored it. It rang again. Different number. Again. Again. On the 4th call, Robert answered with irritation, sharpening his voice. "Mr. Williams, this is Jake Chen from Arizona Republic. I'd like to get your comment on your daughter's essay about Jennifer Davis and Crosstech Industries." "What essay?" Robert hung up, walked to Emily's room. She was sitting up in bed, laptop open, face pale as bone. "Em, did you publish that essay?" "Dad, there's something you need to know about Jennifer." "What did you do?" "Google her. Right now. Please." Robert pulled out his phone, typed Jennifer Davis into the search bar. CEO, Crosstech Industries. Net worth $6 billion. AI automation for aerospace and manufacturing. His hands started shaking. The phone trembled as he scrolled, finding the press release with Jennifer, shaking hands with Horizon's CEO, finding the date June 2021, 2 months before his world ended. Quote from Jennifer, "This partnership represents the future of aerospace efficiency." Translation: 4,000 jobs eliminated for 40% cost reduction. He searched Jennifer Davis Crosstech Horizon layoffs and found articles connecting dots. He should have seen, would have seen, if he hadn't been so focused on teaching, on the money, on the small relief of having something that felt like purpose. "How many people have read this?" His voice came out hollow. Emily checked her laptop. 50,000, and it's going up every minute. "Jesus Christ, Emily." "Dad, I'm sorry I didn't tell you first, but you needed to see." "She lied to me." Robert stood pacing Emily's small room. "For 3 months, every session, every conversation. I know. She was studying me, like I was some kind of—" He couldn't finish the sentence. His phone rang again. Robert ignored it. It rang again. He turned it off completely. Saturday morning, 8:45 a.m. Jennifer arrived on time, carrying 2 coffees, smiling relaxed. She hadn't seen the essay yet. Busy week in San Francisco, board meetings and crisis management for unrelated issues. The personal scandal hadn't reached her yet. "Morning, Robert. Ready to tackle that? Who are you?" Jennifer stopped. The smile died. "What? Who are you? Really?" Robert pulled out printouts from his back pocket. Emily had printed them last night. Jennifer's company bio, the press release with Horizon articles about cross-tech screenshots of the essay that had now reached 200,000 views. He threw them on the workbench. Cross-Tech Industries, CEO Jennifer Davis, $6 billion, major contractor for Horizon Aerospace. His voice was quiet, controlled, dangerous. Any of this ringing a bell? Jennifer's face drained of color. The coffee cups shook in her hands before she set them down carefully, buying time she didn't have. Robert, I can explain. Can you? Because I've been trying to figure out what explanation could possibly make this okay. It's not what you think. Tell me what it is then. The volume rose. Tell me what it is. First time he'd raised his voice, Jennifer flinched. I came here to understand what we'd done, what I'd done. Understand or study. Robert stepped closer, not threatening, but intense. I was a case study. Both. I was supposed to testify before Senate about automation and workforce displacement. My PR team said I needed to sound human, to understand the impact. Robert felt sick. I was a case study. My team found your name in the Horizon records. You'd written that letter to the newspaper. They said you were the perfect subject. Subject. The word tasted like rust and betrayal. I'm sorry. Did you record our conversations? Silence. Answer me. Jennifer's tears came, then streaming down her face. Yes. Voice memos. Every session. I was building a database of language of authentic worker experience so I could sound genuine when I testified. Robert's voice dropped to something quieter and more terrible than shouting. Get out. Robert, please. Get out of my garage. It changed. Somewhere along the way it stopped being research and became what real. Robert was in her space now, not touching, but forcing her to see him, to really see what she'd done. You want to know what real looks like, Jennifer? Real looks like working yourself to exhaustion because your daughter needs stability. Real looks like choosing which bills to pay because you can't afford all of them. Real looks like watching your kid wear the same 3 outfits to school because new clothes means choosing between her growth spurt and the electric bill. His voice cracked. That's what your efficiency protocols did to real people. And you came here to mine our pain for content. You're right. You're absolutely right. There's no excuse. But Robert, I learned. I changed. Don't you dare talk about my daughter. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. You don't even deserve the chance to ask for it. Robert pointed to the door. Get out. Stay away from me. Stay away from Emily. And if you have any decency left, you'll delete every recording you made and never contact us again. Jennifer stood at the doorway, turned back one final time. For what it's worth, and I know it's worth nothing, you were right about everything. People do matter more than numbers. Dignity is more important than efficiency. You changed how I see the world, Robert. Get out. Jennifer left. Robert stood alone in the garage, surrounded by tools that still made sense when nothing else did. The air smelled like oil and metal, and the particular emptiness that comes after trust breaks. Emily emerged from the house. She'd been watching from the window, had heard everything through the open door. She approached her father carefully, like he was something fragile that might shatter. Are you okay? Robert pulled her into a hug, held on tight. I will be. I'm sorry I published it without telling you. Don't be sorry, baby. You told the truth. That takes courage. He pulled back, looked at her face. But things are about to get complicated. You ready for that? We'll handle it together, like always. Robert's phone, still off, had accumulated messages. When he finally powered it on, 17 voicemails waited. Most were reporters. One was different. Mr. Williams, this is Senator Barbara Harris's office. We'd like to discuss your testimony at next month's hearing on automation and workforce displacement. Please call us back at your earliest convenience. Robert stared at the phone. Emily watched him. What is it? They want me to testify in Washington. Are you going to? Robert thought about 4,000 people whose stories had been reduced to spreadsheets. Thought about Emily's courage in telling truth when silence would have been easier. Thought about machines that remember every mistake and make you pay for it later, and whether that same rule applied to people, to systems, to billionaires who treated workers as research subjects. I don't know yet. But even as he said it, Robert knew the answer. The world needed to hear what happened when efficiency became more important than humanity, and he was one of the few people who could tell that story from inside the wreckage. Outside Arizona, sun climbed higher. The day grew hot. Robert stood in his garage, the space where he'd rebuilt his life from pieces, where he'd taught a billionaire CEO how to fix engines, while she secretly recorded his pain, where everything he thought he knew about trust and dignity had just shattered. But Emily stood beside him, fierce and brave and brilliant. And somewhere in Washington, senators were asking questions about automation and accountability. And maybe truth mattered more than he'd been allowed to believe. The story was just beginning. Emily's essay went live on Sunday night at 11:47. By Monday morning at 8, 5,000 people had read it. By noon, 50,000 had shared it. By 6 p.m. CNN was running it as their lead story. The piece was titled, "The Cost of Efficiency, A Daughter's Perspective on Corporate Conscience," and it was devastating in its clarity. Emily wrote about watching her father reduced from aerospace engineer to garage mechanic. She wrote about choosing between school supplies and heating bills. She wrote about the particular shame of being disposable in a country that claimed to value hard work. Then she wrote about Jennifer Davis, the mysterious woman who showed up at their garage claiming to want to learn. The recordings, the deception, the calculated performance of empathy from someone worth billions who'd helped destroy thousands of lives. Emily connected Crosstech AI systems to Horizon's layoffs, Jennifer's wealth to Robert's poverty, corporate efficiency to human cost. The essay was sharp and articulate and absolutely damning. And because Emily was 15 years old and heartbroken and brutally honest, it resonated in ways that adult analysis never could. By Tuesday morning, the world had caught fire. Robert woke at 6 to the sound of diesel engines idling. Through the bedroom window, he saw the first news van parking across the street. NBC Phoenix affiliate satellite dish already deploying. By 8, there were 3 more. A BCCBS local Sedona News. By 10, 5 vans ringed the property like circling vultures. Reporters called questions whenever Robert emerged. "Mr. Williams, did you know who Jennifer Davis was? How do you feel about being used for research? Will you sue Crosstech? Are you going to Washington?" Robert kept the garage door closed. Worked inside on the Peterson brake job that needed finishing by Monday, trying to pretend the cameras didn't exist, that his private betrayal hadn't become public spectacle. Emily couldn't go to school. News crews waited outside Sedona High, cameras ready for the viral teenager who'd exposed a billionaire. Principal Chen called at noon with apology in his voice. "Mr. Williams, maybe Emily should stay home for a few days. We can arrange remote learning. This attention isn't healthy for her or the other students." So Emily was trapped inside, watching through curtains as her words reshaped the world in ways she hadn't anticipated. She'd wanted people to know the truth. She hadn't wanted this, the siege, the spectacle, the way truth became commodity once it left your control. Tuesday evening brought revelation. Someone no one ever confirmed who leaked Jennifer's voice memo recordings to the Washington Post. The paper ran them with a headline that made Robert's chest tighten. "Exclusive, we obtained the recordings. Billionaire CEO's secret voice memos reveal calculated study of displaced worker." The audio clips were worse than Robert imagined. Jennifer's voice, analytical and detached, narrating observations after each session, like a scientist documenting lab results. Subject displays remarkable patience despite economic stress, uses mechanical metaphors to explain life philosophy, machines remember every mistake, suggesting deep-seated belief in consequences and accountability, shows no awareness of my identity or company's role in his displacement. Another clip after session 7. Subject revealed details about layoff experience today. Quote, "Walking out past security like I was a criminal." emotional language perfect for testimony. His description of choosing between daughter's clothes and electric bill demonstrates personal cost of automation in terms that will resonate with congressional audience, filing under human impact testimonials. But the worst came from Session 10. Unexpected development subject is genuinely skilled educator. His teaching methodology patient, systematic, respectful of student intelligence provides insight into what's lost when experienced workers are eliminated. Not just technical knowledge, but pedagogical expertise. This wasn't in research parameters, but documenting for potential use. Robert heard himself on CNN that night. His own voice, recorded without permission, played for millions. I got the email at 9:47 a.m. Your position has been eliminated effective immediately. 20 years and I got 15 minutes to pack my desk. You know what the worst part was? Not the money. It was walking out past security like I'd done something wrong, like those 20 years of dedication meant nothing, like I was disposable. Followed immediately by Jennifer's analysis, powerful language. Disposable is exactly the framing I need for Senate testimony. Subject unconsciously articulates the dignity crisis at the heart of automation displacement. Robert stood up, walked outside into the Arizona night, despite cameras, despite reporters shouting questions he couldn't hear through the roaring in his skull. Emily followed. "Dad?" His voice came out hollow. She recorded that conversation about the worst day of my life, and she analyzed it, like it was data. Emily took his hand, 14 years old, trying to anchor her father to earth. Those were real moments for me, Em. I trusted her. I told her things I haven't even told you. Camera flashes from across the street, a reporter shouting, "Mr. Williams, how does it feel to hear the recordings?" Robert ignored them, focusing on Emily. "I feel violated, like she took something that was mine, my pain, my story, my life, and turned it into her fucking research project." First time Emily had heard him curse like that, it scared her more than the cameras. "Let's go inside, Dad." The national conversation exploded. Twitter trends told the story in hashtags, hashtag Jennifer Davis at 1.2 million tweets, hashtag cost of efficiency at 890,000, hashtag Robert Williams at 650,000. The discourse split predictably along ideological lines, but with unusual intensity. Conservative voices framed it as coastal elites versus real Americans. Liberal voices emphasized corporate accountability and worker exploitation. Tech industry defenders argued Jennifer was being unfairly targeted for transparency. Labor advocates called it confirmation of everything they'd warned about automation without responsibility. But beneath the noise, something else was building. A broader anger at systems that treated human beings as optimization problems. At billionaires who studied poverty like anthropologists documenting primitive cultures. At the casual cruelty of people who'd never missed a meal deciding the fate of people who counted pennies. Crosstech's stock price told its own story. Down 18% Monday, down another 13% Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, the board had called its third emergency meeting in 3 days. Jennifer sat alone in her San Francisco penthouse Wednesday night watching the news coverage on mute. She hadn't slept in 48 hours. Her PR team had drafted 7 different statements. Her lawyers advised strategic silence. The board wanted her to fight to contextualize, to manage the narrative. But Jennifer kept seeing Robert's face when she told him the truth. Kept hearing Emily's essay describing her as someone who studied my father like an anthropologist studies a primitive culture, fascinating specimen, not fully human. The words were accurate. That's what made them unendurable. Thursday afternoon brought Jennifer's press conference. Crosstech headquarters media room, 50-plus journalists, cameras from every major network. Jennifer walked to the podium alone, no PR flanking her, no handlers, whispering talking points. Just a woman who looked like she hadn't slept in days, wearing a black pantsuit and exhaustion. "I'm not going to read a prepared statement. I'm just going to tell you the truth." She took a breath that the cameras caught that would be analyzed frame by frame. Everything Emily Williams wrote in her essay is true. I went to Robert Williams' garage with a hidden agenda. I lied about why I was there. I recorded our conversations without his consent. I studied him like he was a research subject instead of a human being whose life my company had helped destroy. Pause. Camera flashes creating their own rhythm. There is no excuse for what I did. Not my ignorance of working-class struggles, not my anxiety about Senate testimony, not my desire to understand the impact of automation. I violated Robert Williams's trust in the most fundamental way possible. Her voice cracked slightly, genuine emotion breaking through. I listened to those recordings again last night, all of them, and I heard something I didn't hear the first time I heard a good man trying to make sense of a broken system. I heard a father putting his daughter first. I heard someone with more integrity in one conversation than I've shown in my entire career. Then came the accountability portion. Jennifer's hands gripped the podium. Effective immediately, I'm resigning from my operational role at Crosstech. Not stepping back, not taking a leave, resigning. The board will appoint an interim CEO while they search for my permanent replacement. Murmur through the press room like wind through leaves. I'm also creating a $4.5 billion restitution trust. The room erupted. Journalists shouting questions, cameras zooming the controlled chaos of major news breaking in real time. Jennifer raised her voice. Dedicated to worker retraining, small business loans for displaced employees, healthcare coverage during transitions, and educational scholarships. The trust will be governed by an independent board of former displaced workers and labor advocates. I will have zero operational control. A reporter shouted without waiting to be called, "Is this just a tax write-off?" The Senate hearing on automation and workforce displacement will proceed as scheduled next month. I will testify, and I invite this committee to appoint an independent investigator to audit every claim I've just made. If I'm lying about any of it, the public deserves to know. The Q&A lasted 30 minutes. Jennifer answered every question, directly refused every escape route her lawyers had prepared. Yes, she expected consequences. No, she didn't deserve forgiveness. Yes, the trust was legally binding and independently governed. No, she would not try to contact Robert Williams. She'd taken enough from him already. Robert watched on the old TV mounted in his garage corner, supposed to be working, but unable to focus on anything except Jennifer's face on screen. She looked broken in ways that seemed real. But how could he tell any more? How did anyone separate genuine transformation from sophisticated performance? When it ended, Robert's phone rang. Unknown number, but this time he answered. "Mr. Williams, this is Susan Miller. I represent a coalition of displaced Horizon workers considering legal action against Crosstech and Jennifer Davis. We'd like to discuss your potential involvement." "I need to think about it." He hung up. The phone rang again immediately. "Mr. Williams, Senator Barbara Harris's office calling. The senator would like to personally extend an invitation for you to testify at next month's hearing on automation and workforce displacement." This time, Robert didn't dismiss it outright. "I'll call you back." That evening, Robert and Emily sat at the kitchen table with takeout pizza they couldn't really afford, but needed anyway. Some gesture toward normalcy in days that had become surreal. "They want me to go to Washington." Emily set down her slice. "Are you going to?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to tell the whole world what she did. Make sure everyone knows." "And the other part?" "The other part is tired, Em. Tired of being angry. Tired of being a symbol. I just want to fix cars and raise my daughter and not have cameras outside my house." "But they already made you a symbol. The essay did that." Emily's voice went small. "I did that." Robert reached across the table, took her hand. "Hey, no, you told the truth. That's different." "Is it? I made this public. I put us in this position. You stood up for what's right. For me. For all those other workers." Robert squeezed her hand. "That took guts, baby. Real courage. Don't you dare apologize for having a backbone." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Emily spoke quietly. "The world will always have opinions about us, Dad. The question is whether we let them write our story or whether we write it ourselves. I wrote ours. Now you need to decide if you're brave enough to stand behind it." Robert looked at his daughter, 15 years old and wiser than he'd been at 40, and felt something shift. Emily was right. The story was public now, whether he liked it or not. The only choice left was whether to let others narrate it or claim his own voice. Friday morning, Robert called Senator Harris's office back. "I'll testify, but on one condition." The aide's voice was professionally neutral. "What's that?" "I tell the whole truth. Not just the parts that make good TV, not just the stuff that makes Jennifer look bad. Everything. The good, the bad, the complicated." A pause. Then, "Senator Harris wouldn't want it any other way. And Emily comes with me. She started this. She should see where it goes. We'll arrange everything." Meanwhile, in a corner office in Palo Alto, California, Kenneth Anderson read the news coverage with growing alarm. CEO of TechCore Industries. Jennifer's biggest competitor, net worth $4 billion, reputation for ruthlessness that made even Silicon Valley uncomfortable. His VP of strategy sat across the desk, waiting. "Jennifer Davis just created an existential threat to our entire industry." The VP shifted. "The trust? It's just PR?" "No," Kenneth cut him off. "If her worker-led model succeeds, every tech CEO will face pressure to do the same. Shareholders will demand it. Legislators will mandate it. We can't let that happen." "What do you suggest?" Kenneth pulled out a legal pad, started making notes. "Three-pronged strategy. First, we commission an independent investigation. Our investigation-friendly outlet, anonymous sources questioning the trust's legitimacy. Make it look like expensive virtue signaling. Second, lobby against any worker protection legislation. $2 million to the industry. PAC, hire 3 lobbying firms, target senators on the committee. Message worker-led models can't scale, will destroy American competitiveness. And third," Kenneth's smile was cold, "we approach Robert Williams directly, offer him enough money to publicly question Jennifer's commitment, make it look like he doubts the trust, undermine before it even starts." The VP hesitated. "What if Williams doesn't take the bait? Everyone has a price. Single father struggling financially, I'll find his number." 2 weeks before the Senate hearing, Robert received a message through Susan Miller, the lawyer who'd called about the class action. "Robert, I know you have no reason to listen to me, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. But before you testify, there are some things happening with the trust that you should know about. Things that might change how you think about what's possible. I'll be at Desert Moon Cafe tomorrow at 7 a.m. I understand if you don't come, but I hope you will. Jennifer." Emily's reaction was immediate. "It's a trap." "Maybe. You're going anyway." Robert looked at his daughter. "I need to know what she's going to say. Before I testify, I need to understand what she thinks she's building." "Be careful, Dad." "Always am. Desert Moon Cafe at 6:50 a.m. Robert arrived early, claimed a corner table with his back to the wall. Old habit from better days when he'd run project meetings, always positioning himself to see the whole room. He ordered black coffee and waited. Jennifer arrived exactly at 7, punctual as always. But everything else had changed. She drove a used Honda Accord instead of the rental Nissan or whatever Tesla she probably owned. Wore jeans and a plain sweater that looked slept in. Hair pulled back in a ponytail with no artful arrangement. No makeup. She looked smaller, somehow diminished in ways that went beyond physical presence. She sat across from him, hands visible on the table, a gesture of openness that might have been calculated or might have been genuine. Robert couldn't tell anymore. "Thank you for coming. I'm here to listen, not to forgive." "I know." Jennifer pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. "I resigned from Crosstech completely. I'm out." "I saw. What you didn't see in the press conference is what I'm doing with my remaining wealth. $4.5 billion into the trust, but more than that, I'm restructuring everything." Robert opened the folder. 20 pages of legal documents dense with clauses and commitments. He read carefully, engineers' precision applied to contracts instead of propulsion systems. Independent Oversight Board 7 members, all former displaced workers, or labor advocates. Jennifer had zero voting power, zero veto authority, couldn't even attend board meetings unless invited. Funding commitments. $4.5 billion confirmed, sitting in escrow released quarterly based on program metrics and audit results. Program details, job training in renewable energy, advanced manufacturing, precision agriculture. Not retraining people for obsolete industries, but positioning them for growing sectors. Governance bylaws. Workers elect board members. Set curriculum, determine hiring. No top-down control, no CEO override. Audit requirements. Quarterly reviews by independent investigator. Results published publicly. Any discrepancies triggering automatic investigation. This is substantial. Jennifer's hands unfolded. It's a start. Doesn't undo the harm. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to destroy me at the hearing. Robert looked up sharply. What? Tell the Senate exactly what I did, how wrong it was, how people like me make decisions that devastate lives without ever seeing the faces attached to the numbers. Be completely honest about all of it. Then why show me this? Jennifer leaned forward, intensity breaking through exhaustion. Because I also want you to tell them what happened after. That when I was exposed, I didn't just hire better PR. I dismantled my empire. I subjected myself to oversight that most CEOs would never accept. I'm trying to prove that accountability can lead to transformation instead of just destruction. Robert studied her face for tells for signs of performance, found only exhaustion and something that looked like desperate sincerity. You're asking a lot. I know. And if you decide to leave that part out of your testimony, I'll understand. You don't owe me anything. She pulled out a second folder thicker than the first. This is everything. Full trust plan, oversight structure, metrics for measuring impact. It's real. It's happening whether you mention it or not. But I wanted you to have the information before you decide what truth to tell. Robert took the folder but didn't open it. If this is another performance, another way to manage the narrative, then you'll know, and you'll tell everyone, and I'll deserve whatever comes next. They sat in silence. The cafe filled with morning regulars, retirees reading newspapers, construction workers grabbing breakfast burritos, the ordinary rhythm of people living ordinary lives. Robert and Jennifer existed in a bubble separate from that normality, connected by betrayal and possibility, and the question of whether broken things could ever be truly repaired. I'll read this. I'll think about what I want to say. Robert stood leaving money for his untouched coffee. But Jennifer, this better be real. Because if you're lying, if any of this is calculated manipulation, I won't just tell the Senate. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure everyone knows exactly who you are. I understand. Robert left her sitting alone at the table, drove home through Arizona, morning light that made everything sharp-edged and unforgiving. Emily was waiting. How'd it go? I don't know yet. He handed her the folders. Read these. Tell me what you think. Emily spent the day reading legal documents with the same focus she brought to physics textbooks. At dinner, she looked up with an expression Robert couldn't quite parse. This is real, Dad. The oversight structure, the funding commitments, the governance bylaws. If she's lying, she's created incredibly detailed legal documentation that dozens of lawyers and auditors are going to examine. That's either genuine or the most elaborate fraud in corporate history. So you think she means it? I think she's trying. Whether she succeeds is different from whether she's trying. Monday brought Robert and Emily to Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport for the flight to Washington. First time Robert had flown in 3 years. First time Emily had been on a plane since she was 10. They wore their best clothes, Robert's funeral suit from 2019, Emily's debate team outfit, and still looked exactly like what they were, working-class people in a world designed for others. TSA agent checking Robert's boarding pass paused, looked up. Hey, you're that guy from the news. Good luck in Washington. Robert nodded, uncomfortable with recognition with being that guy instead of just Robert Williams who fixed things. On American Airlines Flight 1547 seats 23A and 23B, Emily asked the question she'd been holding since the cafe meeting. What are you going to say about her? Robert looked out the window at clouds that seemed close enough to touch. All of it, the good and the bad. What if people think you're defending her? Then that's their problem. I'm not defending what she did, but I'm also not going to pretend what she's doing now doesn't matter just because it makes a cleaner story. Emily considered this. Do you forgive her? Long pause. The kind of silence that held complicated truths refusing to simplify. I don't know yet, baby. Maybe forgiveness isn't even the right question. What is the right question? Robert turned from the window to look at his daughter. Maybe the question is whether I believe people can actually change, whether accountability can lead somewhere besides just punishment. Because if I believe people are just stuck being who they've always been, then what's the point of any of this? So you want to believe her? I want to believe the possibility. There's a difference. Reagan National Airport at 4:30 p.m. Susan Miller met them at baggage claim. Professional woman in her late 40s, pantsuit and briefcase, doing this pro bono because she believed workers deserved voices that weren't mediated through corporate PR. Robert, Emily, welcome to Washington. We have a briefing tonight at the hotel. Senator Harris's staff will walk you through format, likely questions, protocol. When do I testify? Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. Room 216, Hart Senate Office Building. Emily's voice was smaller than usual. Will she be there, Jennifer? Yes, she's scheduled to testify after you. Wednesday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Hart Senate Office Building, Room 216. Smaller than Robert expected from television, more intimidating for its intimacy. 15 senators on a raised dais. Gallery packed with 200 people. Journalists, advocates, displaced workers, policy experts. C-SPAN cameras broadcasting live. Robert saw Jennifer 3 rows back. She wore a simple navy dress flanked by lawyers in expensive suits. Their eyes met for 3 seconds. She looked genuinely afraid. Robert looked away first. Senator Barbara Harris, Massachusetts Democrat. 58, former labor lawyer turned legislator, gavelled the session to order. We convene today to examine the human cost of automation and artificial intelligence in American industry. Today we'll hear from individuals who've lived these consequences as well as industry leaders whose decisions created those consequences. She looked directly at Robert. Our first witness, Mr. Robert Williams, former aerospace engineer, current small business owner from Sedona, Arizona. Robert walked forward alone. Hand on Bible. The oath administered in words that carried 2 centuries of legal weight. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. He sat. Microphone adjusted to his height. Saw Emily in the gallery front row giving a small thumbs up that steadied him. Mr. Williams, thank you for being here. Please tell us about your career at Horizon Aerospace. Robert cleared his throat, pushed down nervousness. I was a senior aerospace engineer for 20 years, designed propulsion systems for commercial satellites, the kind that help scientists understand climate change, enable global communications, track weather patterns. He paused, gathering himself. I trained junior engineers, led quality control teams. Every satellite we launched represented years of precision care collaboration. It mattered. And then what happened? The memory still sharp after 3 years, still capable of cutting. June 14, 2021. I got an email at 9:47 in the morning. Subject line: Workforce Optimization Update. Body: Your position has been eliminated effective immediately. Voice steady but carrying pain like a low-frequency hum. 20 years, and I got 15 minutes to pack my desk. My security badge stopped working at 5:01 p.m. I walked out past guards, people I'd known for years, carrying a cardboard box with family photos and a coffee mug my daughter made in 3rd grade. The gallery was silent. Even the journalists stopped typing. 4,000 people lost their jobs that day. Not because we were bad at our jobs, not because the company was failing, because AI systems could do what we did faster and cheaper. Senator Harris leaned forward. How did that affect your life, Mr. Williams? Robert met her eyes. I lost more than a job, Senator. I lost my identity, my purpose, my financial security. I went from someone who contributed meaningful work I was proud of to someone who couldn't afford to buy his daughter new shoes. His voice cracked, slightly genuine emotion breaking through. From respected in my field to someone who couldn't get callbacks for entry-level positions because I was overqualified and outdated. The financial impact, poverty, stress, choosing which bills to pay, that was hard. But the psychological impact was worse. Feeling disposable. Feeling like everything I'd built, everything I'd contributed for 2 decades meant nothing. Senator Collins from Maine, Republican, jumped in. "Mr. Williams, do you blame technology? Should we stop advancing AI to protect jobs?" Robert had anticipated this, prepared for it. "No, Senator. I don't blame technology. I blame the system that lets companies profit from automation without any responsibility for the people they displace." He paused for emphasis. "AI probably can do some of what we did, maybe even most of it. But there's things it can't do. Can't feel when a system's about to fail. Can't improvise when the problem doesn't match the manual. Can't mentor a scared kid fresh out of college. Can't care about the work beyond the quarterly earnings report." Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. "Mr. Williams, we've all read your daughter's essay. You met Jennifer Davis, CEO of Crosstech Industries. Can you tell us about that?" The room leaned forward collectively. This was the story they'd come for: billionaire and displaced worker deception and exposure, the narrative that had dominated headlines for 2 weeks. Robert took a breath, told the truth. Meeting on Highway 89. Jennifer coming to the garage. 3 months of what he'd thought was teaching but was actually observation. The recordings discovered the confrontation, Emily's courage in exposing what powerful people preferred hidden. What I didn't know was that Jennifer Davis was CEO of Crosstech, one of the companies that provided AI systems to Horizon. What I didn't know was that she was recording our conversations. What I didn't know was that I was a case study to her, not a person. His voice hardened with controlled anger. "She came to my garage claiming she wanted to learn about engines. What she really wanted was to study how displaced workers talk, think, feel, so she could sound authentic when testifying here. Everything I shared with her, my struggles, my fears, my love for my daughter, she recorded it and analyzed it like I was some kind of anthropological specimen." Gallery murmurs. Camera zooming on Jennifer, catching tears streaming silently down her face. "How did you feel when you learned the truth?" Robert looked directly at Jennifer across the room. "Betrayed. Used. Foolish for trusting someone who saw me as data rather than a human being. It was a violation that went deeper than words can express." Long pause. The silence itself communicating weight. Then Senator Harris asked the question that would define everything that followed. "Mr. Davis has since apologized and announced significant changes to her company. Does that change how you view her actions?" This was the moment. Every camera on Robert, Jennifer holding her breath, Emily watching from the gallery. The entire national conversation pivoting on what he said next. Robert took a slow breath. Her initial actions were inexcusable. He let that land, let the condemnation fill the room. Recording someone without consent, lying about your identity to gain trust, using someone's pain as research material. Those are clear violations of basic human decency. No apology erases that. No amount of money fixes that fundamental breach of trust. Jennifer closed her eyes, accepting the judgment. But then Robert continued, "But what happened after she was exposed matters too." The room shifted. Senator Harris's eyebrows raised. When Jennifer Davis was caught, she had options. She could have hired crisis managers, waited for the scandal to blow over, gone back to business as usual once the outrage cycle moved on. Instead, she resigned from her company. Not stepped back, resigned. She created a $4.5 billion trust for displaced workers. Real programs with real funding, not corporate PR gestures. Robert pulled documents from his jacket, held them up. Job training, educational scholarships, small business loans, healthcare coverage during transitions, governed by an independent board of displaced workers and labor advocates. She has zero control over how the money gets spent. Senator Collins, skeptical. Mr. Williams, are you saying you forgive her? No, Senator. I'm saying I believe actions matter more than words. And her actions since the exposure have been substantive. Are they enough? I don't know. Maybe nothing could ever be enough. But they're real. They're verifiable. And they represent the kind of accountability we rarely see from people in power. Robert leaned into the microphone, voice strengthening. Here's what I think matters, Senators. Jennifer Davis did something terrible. She got caught. And instead of just managing the fallout, she's trying to transform the system that enabled her behavior. That doesn't make us friends, doesn't erase the harm, but it does suggest that maybe exposure and accountability can lead to genuine change instead of just punishment. The room erupted. Whispers, camera clicks, reporters typing frantically. Senator Harris gavelled for order. Robert wasn't finished. With respect, Senators, I'm tired of being measured. I'm tired of performing the role of victim. What I want is change, real change. If someone with Jennifer Davis's resources and influence is willing to put her money where her guilt is, then I'm willing to see where that leads before I decide whether she's irredeemable. Senator Martinez from California took her turn. Mr. Williams, what would genuine transformation look like? What should companies do when they deploy automation? This was what Robert had come to say. The reason for enduring cameras and scrutiny and having his pain dissected on national television. Full transparency in automation decisions. No more surprise layoffs. Workers deserve advance notice retraining options. Transition support. Worker retraining funded by the companies doing the automating, not taxpayers, not empty promises. Real oversight to ensure AI doesn't just concentrate wealth in fewer hands. He counted points on calloused fingers. And people like Jennifer Davis actually admitting in binding commitments, not press releases, that they got rich by externalizing costs onto workers and communities. Senator Thompson from Alabama, Republican, challenged, isn't that just socialism requiring companies to pay for worker retraining? Robert met his eyes directly. No, sir. It's capitalism with consequences. If a company profits from automation, they should bear the cost of displacement. That's not socialism. That's responsible business practice. We're not asking for handouts. We're asking for dignity. We're asking that when companies get rich by making us obsolete, they at least help us become something else. That's not too much to ask. Small applause from the gallery. Harris gavelled it down, but not before the cameras caught it, before the moment became clip that would run on every evening news broadcast. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Your testimony has been illuminating. Robert stood on legs that shook slightly from adrenaline, walked back to the gallery. Emily hugged him tight. You were amazing, Dad. Whispered so cameras wouldn't catch it. I just told the truth, baby. Whispered back. After a 15-minute recess, Jennifer was called. Our next witness, Miss Jennifer Davis, former CEO of Crosstech Industries. Jennifer walked forward alone. No lawyers, no handlers. Hand on Bible oath administered. Sat at the witness table and looked at Robert one last time. He nodded slightly. Not forgiveness, just acknowledgement of shared humanity in an inhuman moment. Miss Davis, you just heard Mr. Williams' testimony. Would you like to respond? Jennifer looked directly at Robert. Mr. Williams just gave me the most generous interpretation possible of my actions. I don't deserve that generosity. She turned to the senators. What I did was calculated, manipulative, and morally bankrupt. I identified a vulnerable person whose life my company had helped destroy, and I studied him like a research project. I recorded private conversations without consent. I built trust through deception. I used his pain as material for testimony preparation. There is no defending that. No emotion in her voice, just facts clear and unvarnished. Then why did you do it? Jennifer paused, gathered herself. Because I didn't see him as a person. I saw him as a problem I needed to solve. For years I'd been making decisions that affected thousands of lives. But those lives were just numbers to me. Efficiency metrics. labor cost reductions, quarterly targets. Her voice cracked slightly. When I was called to testify here, I panicked, because I realized I didn't actually understand the human cost of my decisions. So I went looking for understanding in the most unethical way possible by treating a real person's pain as anthropological data. What changed Miss Davis? He did. She gestured toward Robert. Somewhere in those 3 months, Robert Williams stopped being a case study and became someone I actually cared about. I watched him work himself to exhaustion for his daughter. Heard him explain that machines remember mistakes, but people deserve better. Understood that he wasn't just teaching me about engines, he was teaching me about dignity, patience, craftsmanship. She described the slow transformation, the horror of realizing what she'd been doing for years, optimizing systems, without caring about the people inside them. Then she pulled a document from her folder, held it up. This is my complete resignation from Crosstech Industries, effective the day after this hearing. Not stepping back, not advisory role. Complete severance. Room reaction, shuffling whispers, the sound of a major revelation landing. I'm divesting all controlling shares. Those shares are going into a worker-owned trust. Employees will elect board representation. New governance structure includes worker voice at every decision level. Senator Thompson challenged, "How do we know this isn't sophisticated damage control?" Jennifer leaned forward, intensity, breaking through exhaustion. You don't. You can't know my motivations are pure because motivations are invisible. All you can evaluate are my actions and the structures I'm putting in place to prevent backsliding. She addressed Senator Harris directly. If you're willing, I'd like this committee to appoint a truly independent investigator, someone with no connection to me or Crosstech, to verify every claim I've made. Full access to financial records, trust documents, personal communications. If I'm lying about any of it, the public deserves to know. Harris looked shocked. Miss Davis, that's highly unusual. Jennifer's small smile carried no humor. So is a billionaire CEO actually trying to undo harm instead of hiring better PR. Brief ripple of laughter in the gallery quickly suppressed. Jennifer's final statement came with quiet force. I need everyone to understand something clearly. None of this makes what I did to Robert Williams okay. None of it erases the harm. I'm not seeking redemption. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm seeking accountability that leads somewhere productive. She looked at Robert again. Robert Williams taught me that machines remember every mistake and make you pay for it later. I think systems work the same way. My mistakes are structural now, embedded in an economy that values efficiency over humanity. The only way to fix that is to dismantle it piece by piece and build something better. Final words delivered with the weight of complete commitment. And yes, I'm terrified I'll fail. Yes, I'm sure people will find ways I'm still being self-serving. But I'm trying anyway. Because trying is the only alternative to accepting that nothing can ever change. After the hearing adjourned, after the gallery emptied and press rushed to file stories, Emily stood suddenly. I want to talk to her. Robert started to object, then saw his daughter's face and understood. Emily needed this, needed to close the loop she'd opened with her essay. They approached the witness table where Jennifer gathered papers with shaking hands. She looked up surprised and wary. I still think what you did was wrong. Emily's voice clear and certain. Jennifer knelt to Emily's level. You're absolutely right. But I read your proposal, the trust. Dad showed me everything. I decided that you heard us, that you're trying to fix it. Pause. Both things are true at the same time, and I don't know what to do with that. You don't owe me anything, Emily. Not forgiveness, not acknowledgement, nothing. You told a truth that needed to be told. That changed everything. That's enough. Emily extended her hand. I'm not saying we're okay. I'm just saying maybe someday we could be. Jennifer took the hand gently, tears streaming. That's more than I hoped for. Thank you. Robert stepped forward then. Jennifer, if you're serious about this, about really changing things, you're going to need help. People who understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of efficiency protocols. People who can keep you honest. She stood facing him. But, are you offering? I'm saying if you want to build something real, you can't do it surrounded by yes men who've never chosen between rent and groceries. He pulled out the card she'd given him 3 months ago at the garage. Call when you're ready to talk about what comes next. Jennifer took the card, stunned. Thank you. Don't thank me, just do the work. 3 people stood in that Senate chamber connected by betrayal and possibility, and the fragile hope that maybe broken things could be repaired. What none of them knew was that their biggest fight wasn't behind them. Kenneth Anderson was already mobilizing, already planning, already calculating how to destroy everything they were trying to build. The story was far from over. 2 weeks after the Senate hearing, Robert opened his email to find a message from Susan Miller with a subject line that made his jaw tighten. We have a problem. Urgent. The attached article came from National Business Chronicle, a publication Robert had never heard of, but that carried the visual weight of legitimacy, clean layout, professional typography, the kind of design that suggested serious journalism rather than tabloid speculation. The headline hit like a sucker punch: Cross-Tech Worker Trust Under Scrutiny, Experts Question Sustainability Transparency. Robert read with growing anger. The piece was dressed up as investigative reporting, but read like character assassination. Anonymous industry analysts questioned whether the trust was primarily a tax shelter. Anonymous Silicon Valley executives suggested worker-led governance couldn't scale. And buried in paragraph 7, a poison pill aimed directly at him. Perhaps most troubling are questions about Robert Williams's role. Williams, the displaced worker whose viral story sparked the scandal, now appears to be consulting for the trust-raising concerns about whether he's been compensated to defend Davis publicly. Williams's exact salary has not been disclosed. Robert's hands shook as he dialed Susan. Who wrote this garbage? Her voice carried professional calm over frustration. Byline says Marcus Webb, freelance business reporter, but I did some digging. The article was commissioned and paid for by Sentinel Strategic Communications. Never heard of them. Crisis management firm for tech companies. Guess who's their biggest client? Tell me. Tech Core Industries, Kenneth Anderson's company. The name meant nothing to Robert, but Susan's tone suggested it should. She explained Anderson was Jennifer's biggest competitor, CEO of a rival AI automation firm. Someone who'd built a $4 billion fortune on the same efficiency over humanity model Jennifer was now trying to dismantle. If our model succeeds, every tech CEO faces pressure to do the same, Susan continued. Anderson can't let that happen. He's going to try to destroy the trust before it even launches. Robert called Jennifer immediately. She answered on the second ring voice, tired in ways that suggested she'd already seen the article, already understood its implications. Kenneth Anderson. He's been circling for weeks. What do? We prove him wrong, not with words, with results. But proving anything required time they didn't have. The Sedona Center was scheduled to open in 6 weeks. 32 students enrolled, mostly middle-aged workers who'd been unemployed for years. People who'd taken enormous risks quitting survival jobs to bet on a program that national media was now calling into question. Tuesday morning brought phone calls. Patricia Martinez, 48, former automotive plant supervisor from Ohio, voice tight with worry. Mr. Williams, people are asking if this is real, if we're just being used again. Is the money actually there? Michael Garcia, 32, former logistics coordinator, now driving for rideshare 70 hours a week. My wife saw the article. She wants me to drop out. Says it's another scam and we can't afford for me to waste time on scams. By Tuesday afternoon, 3 students had emailed withdrawal notices. Emergency meeting that night in Robert's garage, nowhere else to meet, no conference room or office, just the space where this had all begun. Robert, Jennifer, Susan Miller, Patricia Martinez, Michael Garcia, Linda Thompson, and 5 other enrolled students crowded between workbenches and tool chests. Patricia spoke first, direct and uncompromising. I don't trust you, Miss Davis. This article says you're using the trust for tax benefits. Is that true? Jennifer met her eyes without flinching. No, but I understand why you'd believe it. I've given you no reason to trust me. Michael leaned forward. The article says Robert's getting paid to defend you. How much are you paying him? Robert cut in before Jennifer could answer. Nothing. Yet. The plan was for me to be director once the center opens. Salary was going to be $75,000 a year voted on by a worker board, not Jennifer. But that hasn't happened yet because we haven't opened yet. Linda Thompson, 51 former quality control analyst, spoke with the precision of someone who'd spent decades catching manufacturing defects. $75,000 doesn't sound like selling out. But how do we know the trust is real? How do we know the money won't just disappear? Jennifer pulled out her phone, pulled up documents, projected them on the garage wall using a portable projector she'd brought. Financial statements, governance bylaws, escrow confirmations, numbers and legal language that should have been reassuring but felt abstract against the reality of people's survival hanging in balance. We release everything, Jennifer's voice cut through the murmurs. Full financial records, every governance document, my personal emails about the trust, total transparency. One of the board members objected. That's dangerous. Anderson will weaponize anything he finds, any mistake, any typo, any unclear clause. Robert looked at Jennifer hard. Then we better make sure there's nothing to weaponize. You said you wanted accountability. This is what it looks like. You open the books completely, or we shut this down right now. Jennifer didn't hesitate. Open the books. Wednesday morning, the Crosstech Worker Restitution Trust website uploaded 2,347 pages of documents, every contract, every financial transaction, every governance bylaw, every email between Jennifer and trust administrators, Robert's proposed salary agreement showing worker board approval process, bank statements proving funds in escrow, legal opinions on tax treatment demonstrating the trust wasn't a shelter, but a legitimate charitable vehicle with no personal benefit to Jennifer. Jennifer recorded a video statement that went live simultaneously. To address concerns raised in recent media coverage, this is everything. Every document related to the trust. No redactions except personal information like social security numbers. You'll see that I have zero operational control. You'll see that Robert Williams's proposed salary is standard nonprofit director compensation. You'll see that the trust is funded, structured for sustainability, designed to outlive my involvement. If you find anything that contradicts these claims, make it public. Because accountability means accepting consequences, not managing narratives. The words carried weight because they were verifiable, because Jennifer had subjected herself to oversight that most CEOs would never accept. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. If we're building something real, we shouldn't be afraid to show every bolt and wire. And if we're building something fake, it deserves to die in the light. Thursday brought Christopher Lee's preliminary report. Lee, former federal prosecutor appointed by Senator Harris as independent investigator, released findings that landed like a depth charge in the ongoing media battle. After 8 weeks of intensive audit, including forensic accounting review and interviews with 47 stakeholders, I make the following preliminary findings. The Crosstech Worker Restitution Trust is legitimate, fully funded with $4.538 billion in confirmed assets. Governance structure prevents Ms. Davis from exercising operational control. Mr. Williams's proposed compensation is appropriate for comparable nonprofit positions and was determined by independent board vote. Concerns about long-term sustainability are valid, but manageable with proper oversight, which currently exists. The trust represents unprecedented commitment to worker-centered automation accountability. By Friday, the tide had turned. Washington Post editorial, Jennifer Davis's radical accountability experiment deserves a chance. New York Times analysis, Crosstech Trust audit confirms legitimacy challenges tech industry norms. Even Fox Business ran cautiously positive coverage. Worker-led training model shows promise in early testing. Students returned. Patricia Martinez called Friday afternoon. Mr. Williams, I read the audit. I'm back in. Michael Garcia. My wife read the documents. She said I'd be stupid not to do this. By Friday evening, 31 of 32 students had recommitted. But Kenneth Anderson wasn't finished. 6 weeks later, when the Sedona Center opened with ribbon-cutting ceremony and local press coverage, when 32 students filled workshops learning solar panel installation and wind turbine maintenance and advanced manufacturing techniques, Anderson was already planning his next move. The sabotage was sophisticated. Anonymous zoning complaints filed with Sedona city government, forcing inspections that delayed construction of a second building. Former Crosstech employees, people who'd been laid off in Jennifer's cost-cutting before her transformation, contacted students with emails claiming the whole thing was a scam, that Jennifer was using them for PR, that the money would dry up within months. Social media campaigns emerged from nowhere. #CrosstechScam, trending in tech circles. Anonymous accounts posting seemingly inside information about trust mismanagement that was detailed enough to sound credible, but vague enough to be unfalsifiable. 3 months after opening, when the first cohort was halfway through their training, someone leaked partial trust documents to Breitbart News. The leak was surgical, carefully selected pages taken out of context to create false impressions. One leaked page showed Jennifer retaining advisory authority over major expenditures while omitting the page that explicitly defined advisory as non-binding and showed Worker Board having final approval. Another showed Robert's compensation as $500,000, while omitting that this was a cumulative 7-year projection, not annual salary. Headlines exploded across right-wing media: leaked docs, Crosstech reform, a sham CEO still in control. Displaced worker cashing, and Robert Williams gets $500,000 to defend Billionaire. Workshop attendance dropped from 31 to 19 within 2 days. Parents called asking if the program was real or if their kids were being scammed. Local Arizona news picked up the story. Questions swirl around Sedona Worker Center. Patricia Martinez called Robert crying, "Mr. Williams, I quit my Walmart job to do this full-time. If this falls apart, I have nothing." Emergency meeting Monday night. Robert held the leaked documents, comparing them to the full versions on the website. These are real pages, but they're missing context. The full documents prove the opposite of what they're claiming. Linda Thompson. "So, we show the full documents." Susan Miller shook her head. "We already did. They're on the website, all 2,347 pages. Patricia's voice broke. "Then why are people believing the lies?" "Because lies are simpler than truth. A headline saying scam is easier to believe than reading 2,000 pages of legal documents." Jennifer stood, decision crystallizing. "I'll release a video statement. Show the missing pages. Explain the context." Michael Garcia spoke quietly. "Will anyone watch it? Or will they just read the headlines?" The silence held weight of hard truths. Robert broke it. "We need someone credible, someone people trust more than us. What about Christopher Lee?" The investigator. Tuesday afternoon, Lee held a press conference. He projected slides showing full document sections, the pages that had been deliberately omitted from the leak. "I've reviewed the leaked documents circulating in media. They are authentic pages from the Crosstech Trust Governance Manual. However, they have been deliberately presented out of context to create false impressions." He showed page 47, not included in the leak, stating explicitly, "The founder shall have zero veto authority over worker board decisions." He explained the salary figure. "The $500,000 represents Mr. Williams's cumulative projected salary over 7 years, not annual compensation. His actual salary is $75,000 per year, standard for nonprofit executive directors." His conclusion was unequivocal. Someone is deliberately manipulating these documents to undermine legitimate worker-centered reform. I encourage media outlets to review complete documents before publishing claims based on selectively leaked materials. Retractions began that evening. Breitbart added updates. Daily Caller issued corrections. The damage control worked. Students' returned attendance climbed back to 28 by Wednesday. But the pattern was clear. Anderson wasn't trying to destroy the trust in one dramatic blow. He was bleeding it slowly, creating constant crisis that forced defensive posture that made it impossible to focus on the actual work of training displaced workers. 5 months after opening, the Sedona Center approached its first graduation. 23 students completing the program's 72% completion rate. 17 already had job offers. 74% placement rate, wages averaging $58,000 annually compared to $42,000 pre-layoff average. The statistics represented something more than numbers. They were Patricia Martinez, hired as quality control supervisor at a solar manufacturing facility in Phoenix, making $62,000 a year more than her old automotive job. They were Michael Garcia, directing logistics for a 3-state solar installation network at $68,000 annually. They were Linda Thompson, teaching manufacturing precision at the center, while consulting on the side, calling it the most meaningful work of her 22-year career. The graduation ceremony was scheduled for 2 weeks out, media narrative turning positive. Then Kenneth Anderson made his final play. Tuesday morning, Robert sat in Desert Moon Cafe, grabbing coffee before heading to the center. A man in an expensive suit approached his table, tailored in ways that announced wealth before words could, confident in the way of people who'd never been told no and meant it. "Mr. Williams, Kenneth Anderson. Mind if I sit?" Robert's wariness showed. "Do I know you?" Kenneth sat without waiting for permission. "CEO of TechCore Industries. I've been following your work with great interest." He slid a folder across the table. "I'd like to discuss a consulting opportunity. $2 million for 6 months of work." Robert didn't touch the folder. "Consulting on what?" "Corporate automation ethics, helping us implement responsible AI deployment, worker transition planning." Kenneth's smile was practiced. "It's all standard. 6 months, $2 million minimal time commitment, maybe 10 hours a month. We value your perspective." Robert opened the folder, read the contract with engineer's attention to detail, found the clause that confirmed his suspicions. "Consultant will advise on public positioning regarding automation accountability initiatives." He looked up. "You want me to help you spin automation layoffs?" "I prefer to think of it as helping us communicate effectively about necessary business decisions." Kenneth dropped the pretense, leaned in. "Look, Williams, you've been used once already. Don't be used again. Jennifer Davis is playing you. This trust tax write-off with good PR. In 2 years, funding dries up, governance collapses, you're left holding the bag. The independent audit said, audits can be manipulated." Kenneth tapped the contract. "But this is real money. Enough to secure Emily's future, send her to MIT without debt, buy a real house instead of renting. Stop worrying about grocery bills." He paused for effect. "All you have to do is publicly question whether Jennifer's really committed. Just raise some doubts. Call for another independent investigation. That's it. Easy money." Robert stared at him, understanding crystallizing. "You're offering me $2 million to sabotage worker training programs." "I'm offering you $2 million to ask legitimate questions about sustainability and—" Robert pulled out his phone, placed it on the table between them. "Arizona is a one-party consent state for recording. I've been recording this conversation since you sat down." Kenneth's face drained color. "What are you—" "So just to be clear, Mr. Anderson, you're offering me $2 million to publicly doubt the Cross-Tech Worker Trust in order to undermine worker-centered automation accountability programs." Kenneth stood abruptly. "You wouldn't. I'll sue you for—" "For what?" "Recording a conversation in a one-party consent state." "Go ahead. I'll see you in court. With this recording as evidence." Kenneth pointed a finger, voice tight with rage. "You're making a big mistake, Williams. I have lawyers who—" "Get out of my sight!" Kenneth stormed out. Robert sat there, hand shaking slightly, coffee forgotten. Pulled out his phone, saved the recording to 3 different cloud services. Called Jennifer and Susan on conference. "I have something you both need to hear." He played the recording. Silence after it ended heavy with implications. Jennifer's voice came tight. "He offered you $2 million. To sabotage everything we've built. Susan, all business. This is evidence of corporate sabotage. We should release it immediately." Robert hesitated. "You sure?" Once it's out there, Kenneth comes after me hard. Lawyers, investigators, everything. He's already coming after you, Susan countered. This just proves it. Jennifer's voice carried something Robert hadn't heard before, steel wrapped in exhaustion. Robert, this is your decision. But if you release it, you're exposing what billionaires are willing to do to prevent accountability. That matters. Robert thought about Patricia Martinez, who'd quit Walmart to bet on this program. About Michael Garcia working 70-hour weeks while retraining. About Linda Thompson and the other 20 students whose futures hung on whether worker-centered models could survive corporate opposition. Let's do it. Wednesday morning, Robert posted the recording to YouTube with a simple statement. Yesterday, Kenneth Anderson, CEO of TechCore Industries, offered me $2 million to publicly question the Cross-Tech Worker Trust. This is what we're up against, billionaires willing to pay millions to prevent other billionaires from doing the right thing. This tells you everything you need to know about why worker-centered programs are necessary. Because the people who profit from automation will do anything to avoid accountability. Viral within 6 hours. 3 million YouTube views by Wednesday evening. Twitter trending #Kenneth Anderson, #automation accountability, #worker rights. Every major network running clips Kenneth's voice. $2 million, just raise some doubts, easy money. Robert's voice, you're offering me $2 million to sabotage worker training programs. Kenneth's voice, I prefer to think of it as helping us communicate effectively. Thursday brought Kenneth's downfall. TechCore board held emergency meeting. Stock down 18% in one day. Major clients requesting meetings. Employees leaking internal emails showing Kenneth knew about the hit pieces, had personally approved the Breitbart leak strategy. TechCore board statement, Thursday afternoon. The board of directors has accepted Kenneth Anderson's resignation effective immediately. We are conducting full internal review of recent public relations activities. Senator Barbara Harris appeared on CNN Thursday evening. The Kenneth Anderson recording proves exactly why we need the automation accountability legislation I'm introducing next month. Workers deserve protection from this kind of corporate manipulation. 3 more senators co-sponsored the bill within 24 hours. It makes you wonder if Kenneth Anderson was willing to pay $2 million to stop one training center, how many other programs have been quietly sabotaged, how many workers have been kept down by billionaires protecting their profits. What would you have done with that money on the table? 2 weeks later, graduation day arrived with Arizona sun making everything sharp and bright. Sedona Center Auditorium filled beyond capacity, 150 seats, all occupied, people standing in back. 23 graduates in caps and gowns that Emily had suggested making themselves to save money, turning necessity into symbol of self-sufficiency. Families filled the front rows. Local community members. Press maintaining respectful distance this time, understanding they were witnessing something that transcended their usual narratives. Senator Harris had flown in as surprise guest, her presence lending governmental weight to grassroots achievement. Robert stood at the podium looking out at faces that represented more than statistics. Each graduate carried a story of displacement and determination of being told they were obsolete and proving the assessment catastrophically wrong. 6 months ago, you walked into this building. You'd been told you were obsolete, that your experience didn't matter, that the future had no place for you. He paused, letting them remember. You were 48, 52, 58 years old. Society said you couldn't learn new skills. You proved them wrong. You'd been unemployed for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. They said you'd lost your work ethic. You proved them wrong. You were treated as disposable. You proved you're irreplaceable. His voice strengthened with conviction earned through shared struggle. The machines told you that you didn't matter anymore. Today you taught the machines they were wrong, because the future isn't built by algorithms. It's built by people who refuse to quit. Standing ovation. Not polite applause, but genuine celebration, recognition of achievement that transcended individual success to prove systemic possibility. Patricia Martinez spoke as graduate representative, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd survived displacement and emerged strengthened. Mr. Williams taught me that starting over isn't failure, it's courage. Miss Davis funded this program, but we built it. We proved that worker-led models work. Now it's our job to take this to every state in America. More applause, the kind that suggested movement rather than moment. Jennifer sat in the back row deliberately, not on stage, not part of the ceremony program, just watching, crying quietly as students crossed stage receiving certificates that represented new futures. Not performing for cameras, none pointed at her, just genuinely moved by what she'd helped enable, but hadn't controlled what workers had built when given resources without strings. After the ceremony, as families took photos and graduates exchanged contact information and promises to stay connected, Jennifer slipped toward the parking lot. Robert caught her. "You leaving already?" She wiped her eyes. "This wasn't about me, didn't want to make it about me. You funded it. You built it. Patricia said it right, I wrote the check. You and the students did the work." Pause. Arizona heat making the air shimmer. "Thank you. For the funding. For subjecting yourself to oversight. For trying." Jennifer's voice came quiet. "Thank you for giving me a chance when I didn't deserve one." Awkward silence. Two people connected by betrayal and repair, not quite friends, but something more complex than allies. "Are we friends now, after everything?" Robert considered honestly. "I don't know. We're something. Partners in repair, maybe. People who share a mission. But friends requires trust. I'm not sure I can give completely." "That's fair. But I'm glad you're part of this work. Glad you chose accountability over image management." Small smile. "That's more than you deserve. But it's what I've got." Jennifer laughed, despite tears. "I'll take it." Emily appeared then, 16 years old now, taller and more confident than the 14-year-old who'd written that essay 18 months ago. She'd been watching from the front row, had seen the whole ceremony, had witnessed what her courage in publishing that essay had ultimately enabled. She walked up to Jennifer with the directness Robert had always admired in his daughter. "I still think what you did was wrong." Jennifer knelt to Emily's level. "You're absolutely right. But I read your proposal, the trust. Dad showed me everything. The audit confirmed it." Emily's voice carried the precision she brought to physics problems, to debate arguments, to any situation requiring clear thinking. "I decided that you heard us, that you're trying to fix it." Pause. The weight of complicated truth. Both things are true at the same time, and I don't know what to do with that. Jennifer's eyes filled again. "You don't owe me anything, Emily. Not forgiveness, not acknowledgement, nothing. You told a truth that needed to be told. That changed everything. That's enough." Emily extended her hand, not for a hug, not for full reconciliation, but for something smaller and more honest. "I'm not saying we're okay. I'm just saying maybe someday we could be." Jennifer took the hand, gently holding it like something precious and fragile. "That's more than I hoped for. Thank you." Robert stepped forward, then pulling something from his pocket. The business card Jennifer had given him that first day at the garage 3 months before the confrontation, back when he'd thought she was just a rich woman playing mechanic. "Jennifer, if you're serious about this, about really changing things, you're going to need help. People who understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of efficiency protocols. People who can keep you honest." She stood facing him. "Are you offering—" "I'm saying if you want to build something real, you can't do it surrounded by yes-men who've never chosen between rent and groceries. The worker board is good, but you need someone who'll tell you when you're slipping back into old patterns. Someone who remembers what you did and won't let you forget." He held out the card. "Call when you're ready to talk about what comes next." Jennifer took the card, stunned into momentary silence. When she found words, they came quiet. "I don't deserve this." Probably not. But the workers who need training centers deserve a program that works, and that's bigger than whether you deserve my help. Robert's voice carried the practical wisdom of someone who'd learned to separate personal feelings from necessary work. "Don't thank me. Just do the work. And don't make me regret this." "I won't." The three of them stood there in the Arizona parking lot, sun beating down cicadas, screaming in the heat, the everyday sounds of Sedona continuing around them. A billionaire CEO who'd given up her empire, a mechanic who'd chosen building over revenge, a teenager who'd refused to stay silent. Not friends, not family, but connected by something that transcended simple categories by betrayal, acknowledged and accountability accepted, and the fragile possibility that broken things could be repaired if you were willing to do the patient, difficult work of putting them back together piece by piece. 5 years later, Robert Williams stood at a podium in MIT's Mechanical Engineering Department. Lecture Hall 10-250 held 200 students and faculty and invited guests and policymakers and press. Emily sat front row 21 now, senior at MIT, double majoring in mechanical engineering and public policy, already fielding job offers from top aerospace firms while considering graduate school. The path from that Arizona garage to this Cambridge lecture hall had been neither straight nor easy, but it had been real. Robert clicked to his first slide network statistics that told a story of systemic change, 23 centers across 18 states, 12,847 graduates, 81% placement rate, $58 million in cumulative wages earned, 47 worker-owned businesses launched, 3 states with adopted worker protection legislation modeled on the trust framework. We haven't solved displacement. We haven't fixed the economy. We haven't made automation consequence-free. Next slide photo of the original Sedona garage where this began. Tools hanging on pegboard. The snap-on toolbox he'd bought used the workbench where he'd taught Jennifer about combustion engines while she secretly recorded him. But we proved something important. Displaced workers aren't problems to be managed. They're experienced, capable people who deserve investment. When you actually treat them that way, when you build systems that value their knowledge and create pathways for contribution, they don't just survive, they thrive. He talked about the model's evolution, how Sedona's success spawned Detroit, Boston, Phoenix, Atlanta, Portland, Cleveland, Houston, how 67 other organizations had adopted the open source framework, how worker-led governance wasn't just idealistic theory, but practical reality producing measurable results. Final slide photo from first graduation. 23 students in homemade caps and gowns. Patricia Martinez speaking at the podium. Jennifer crying in the back row. Emily standing with Robert, pride visible in every face. These 23 people were told they were obsolete. They proved the world wrong. They did it by refusing to accept that disposability is inevitable. Robert paused, gathering his closing thoughts. The lecture hall was silent, attentive in ways that suggested his story had resonated beyond academic interest. This garage is where I learned that broken things can be made whole again if you're willing to do the patient, difficult work of putting them back together piece by piece. Not perfectly, but functionally, strong enough to bear weight, built to last. Then his final statement, the message he'd carried for 5 years, refined through experience and hardship and small victories. The world will always have machines that break down. The question is whether we treat the people who fix them, who build them, who understand them as disposable, or as irreplaceable. 5 years ago, I thought I knew the answer. Today, I'm still learning. But I know this. We owe workers more than efficiency. We owe them dignity. And that's not negotiable. Standing ovation. Real and sustained, the kind that came from genuine respect rather than polite obligation. After the lecture, Robert and Emily walked across MIT campus in late afternoon October sun. Autumn leaves crunched underfoot, students hurried between classes, the ordinary rhythm of academic life flowing around them. Good speech, Dad. Learned from the best. You started all this with one essay. We started it together. They walked in comfortable silence. Emily would graduate in 6 months, had already decided on graduate school at Stanford, full scholarship, research focused on ethical automation frameworks. Robert would return to Sedona, continue consulting for the network while running his garage teaching community college courses on workforce transitions. Jennifer had moved to Oakland, lived simply, consulted for companies trying to implement responsible automation. They talked monthly, worked together on network expansion, maintained the careful partnership they'd built from wreckage. Not redemption, Not revenge, just repair ongoing and imperfect and sufficient. Robert's phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer. Watched your lecture online, proud of you. New center proposal for Seattle worker-owned from day one, full governance structure ready. Want to consult? Robert showed Emily. You going to help? What do you think? I think you already know the answer. Robert texted back, send me the details, let's talk Monday. They reached Emily's dorm. She turned to hug him, this daughter who'd grown from heartbroken 14-year-old to confident young woman who'd sparked a movement with one brave essay and never stopped pushing for truth. Love you, Dad. Love you too, baby. See you Sunday for dinner. Wouldn't miss it. She headed inside. Robert watched her go, then started walking back across campus past buildings where future engineers learned the technical skills he'd once mastered, past students who'd inherit a world still grappling with automation and displacement and the question of whether efficiency could coexist with humanity. He thought about that night on Highway 89. About Jennifer's Ducati sitting dead in desert darkness. About choosing to stop and help a stranger, not knowing she was the architect of his displacement, not knowing that simple act of decency would cascade into movement and transformation, and thousands of lives changed. Someone once told him that machines remember every mistake and make you pay for it later. But Robert had learned something else over 5 years of patient repair. People can choose to remember the rebuilding instead of just the breaking. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes that choice makes all the difference. 5 years. 12,000 lives changed. One billionaire who gave up everything to make it right. One mechanic who chose building over revenge. One teenager who refused to stay silent. Have you ever had to decide between forgiveness and justice? Between holding on to anger or choosing hope? Between tearing down or building up? The answer isn't simple. It never is. But the work continues, imperfect and necessary, one repaired connection at a time. The future isn't written by algorithms. It's built by people who refuse to accept that broken things can't be fixed, that displaced workers are disposable, that accountability is impossible. The work continues.